All right, folks, welcome on back here this Monday morning or Monday afternoon, perhaps 12 p.m. Eastern, wherever you may be residing otherwise. Great to have all of us over here inside our live trading room or otherwise on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, etc. Monday, August 4th, as I'm looking down at my calendar there. Welcome on back here for another fantastic edition of our Traders Talk Workshop as this BTBT trade is just absolutely getting crushed. It just pulled right back down here. Great to have all of our students and members alike, though, just joining us here. Lawrence Grant, Wiz, good evening to him as always from Prague, I believe. Great to see John, Kevin, Lee, Bell, who cleaned up just earlier. I think it was on the Jobby trade, if I'm not mistaken. A couple of those stocks we had called out from earlier. Roberto, Mike, got a full house here just joining us inside our live trading room. And then again, down below, if you're just joining us on social, popping up on the lower left at Cyber Trading U. If you're new to our channel, new to our streamer platform alike, just hit the follow or subscribe button here. And perhaps at the end of this workshop, look to just join us inside our live trading room. You can scan that QR code on the corner right, or you can go right down to the link scrolling down below on the bottom in blue. But otherwise, we got a lot to talk about here, right? We got a full slate to go through here. Just stocks from this morning that took off. Obviously, this one here we'll go into in just a bit. We'll go into different swing trading updates that I have for you on HIMS, Webull, Fubo, Open, the ONDS trade perhaps there that you see on the top right of my screen. And then otherwise, we'll talk about Bitcoin. There's a big crash going into the weekend. Where is it now? What are my overall thoughts on Bitcoin? And then there were some students that sent in questions, emailed me at least. So we're going to go through those at least before we finish up. I see Uriah, Sam, Steven, and we'll go through everything at least. But let's start off now on this BTBD trade. You're going to probably hear me call it BTBT because that's actually another stock. But, just got out on this trade here just before the last half of my position. I got stopped out exactly break even on my second half. I took the first half, though, out just around 450, even before it peaked above this trend line at least. But no, actually just a moment ago, why it pays to be a student inside our live trading room. Bell, Lee, Wiz, Lawrence, Brian, he likes that hood trade. We're going to, focus on a few trades from earlier, Brian. But otherwise, Brian, take a look at this actually. You see this here on the top of our screen here, Brian, right? On the screen here. I just showed this to you and Kathleen and Brad and Michael and all of us just here inside our trading room. I posted this picture. I said, hey, be careful if this happens, right? Little false breakout where it pops up. I just kind of made it go up to 5 here, just lower highs or double topping and then coming back down. I said, be aware for this to happen. And then obviously, nonetheless, look what just happened a moment ago. So, it pays to be a member inside our room just so you could follow our call outs, not just here, but during the better trading time here of the morning. So let's go into BTBD, at least the morning move. Let me ask Brian, Kathleen, Grant, Lawrence, any of us here live, did you catch this trade? Did anyone jump into this BTBD trade? Let me know here. Lawrence, you got a good piece? Nice. All right. Well, and I know a few of us did. The thing is on the stock, it's dropping now, but the order book was pretty good when it was moving in pre-market going into the open. It's kind of surprising because if you go back on the daily chart here, we're not really too fond or familiar of this stock. It's like some new IPO, some low float, low volume piece of crap. And I mean that because look at this thing. Just fell off here over time on the weekly chart. It was an IPO back from 2021, November, and topped off back then at like 425 and then crashed. This is all of the historical charting that I could really just show you here. That's it. So we're not familiar with this stock at all. We don't know it. And most low float stocks, you can't trust as far as you could throw. So that's just where it is surprising, at least earlier in the morning, that this stock had some good liquidity. It had good volume on the order book, made it a lot more tolerable for us to try and take a stab on. Now, truth be told, I didn't really go back on the long-term chart until a little bit later into the move after the market had opened up and this had first popped. I wasn't watching the long-term chart here really as much in pre-market. I saw this pop, but then it pulled back. Even here at this point, when it's dragging back down, right? This still might be up percentage-wise, and there might be some news that may have come out. But when this is dragging back down the 20, 25 minutes prior to the opening bell, I don't think the buyers are winning that battle, right? You know what I mean? So we got to make sure the buyers start to win the battle, and that will give us the chance to try and jump in. So let me ask our students here inside our live trading room. Great to see Damon here. Yes, I'll get to your question in just a moment, Damon. I think it's the replay. Yep, we're going to look to go over that in just a moment, Damon. Let me just ask our students here. When you look at my bookmap screen, generally speaking, right? Generally speaking, where could you see this dark orange line that's going across the page? on the screen here for the BTBD. What do we got, folks? Rich was doing a lot of the dirty work here inside our trading room with the call out, so I'll just show what he was posting here in just a bit. But where do we have this dark orange line? What, we got 275, right? So about 12, 13,000 shares. A lot of us are all kind of just answering right there. So hey, the more this kind of eats away at this resistance, the buyers are starting to win the battle. I broke over it here and made a pretty nice run. So if you had missed it off 275 and it broke out here, then you would want to see, all right, maybe there's a chance it could pull back. Really, there could have been a thought for this to pull back, become support, and then a slingshot back up a little bit higher. That obviously didn't happen. This ended up moving up pretty quickly and made a higher low even from here. So at least at this point, when it ended up popping and it like got halted on the way up here at first, this thing flew, right? Ended up going all the way up towards 428 on this trade. Now, this is where, though, you start to look at the daily chart, the long-term chart, I should say, and you could see that this had all-time high, I guess, back here at like $5.25, 524, 525 right there. So at least there's a thought that the more that this goes up, there's a chance for this to run into resistance. And not even to say at that price, but you could just kind of lean into $5. $5 is a psychological level, the Abraham Lincoln number at least there, right? So you figure, all right, there's a chance that that could be a resistance, if not the all-time high. And granted, it broke into both here, broke above both briefly, but what was the reaction off of that, folks? What was the reaction off of that resistance for, Lynn and Randy, John, Grant, Wiz, Kevin, all of us here? What was the reaction off of this resistance? The hour and a half afterwards. What have you got? What was the reaction off of this resistance? Make sure no one's sleeping here. Make sure my microphone's working, right? Wiz, what do we got? Wiz says sell off. Kevin says rejection. A couple of my coaching students right there. In fact, there we go. There we go, gents. Nice job. So, yeah, I mean, listen, for the hour and a half off of this, it was rejecting it. It was coming down. It wasn't breaking above it. It wasn't trying to flip that into support, at least not the top line, at least, right? So it ended up coming back down. And then just before, I just got stopped out on the second half of the trade I took just before here. Let me go into that, and I'll just show you why that didn't work out at least as well as I wanted it to. But this all has to do with halts, and we covered this in our phase 2 course just like maybe a couple of weeks back in the month of July. But when this reopened off of one of the halts that it had, you had this big print that came out at $4.19. It was about 144,000 shares. All right, well, that sounds pretty large. Let's take a look at, I don't know, just for size, maybe the iceberg that was at 275 that all of us wrote back to me on at 275. That's about 13,000, 12,780 shares. All right, well, quick question, folks. Damon, Lynn and Randy, Grant, Kevin, all of us just here in chat. What's a larger size? 12,700 blah, 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 or 143,549? So, that's just where I would imagine that this will become a key level over time here on this trade. The hope is for this to become support. The hope is for this to flip into a support level here on the breakout. Unfortunately, it didn't do it here. So it didn't go under and over. It broke under and it stayed under. So that's where I'm expecting this to flip into resistance. It did. The more times it keeps pecking into that resistance, though, you should be expecting that breakout. And that's what happens here. So it led to a great move up heading into the mid-morning. That was the first trade off of 420. And then even just before I took it a second time off that same price right here, ended up making the push up. And then I got out on like half the trade at like 5. No. That was beforehand. Yeah, I knew it didn't go up that high. I ended up jumping in here as prior to us beginning traders talk, jumped in right over 420. I took the first half out just right around 450. Then the second half, I played to say, listen, if it's going to hold over this as support, cool. If it doesn't hold over this as support, not cool. It's as simple as that at times, right? So this is some small cap, low float stock that we can't trust as far as we could throw. We don't know the first thing about this stock. aside, actually, I do know. I know the first thing about this stock. I don't know the second, third, or fourth thing about this stock. Apparently, this thing is a burger company. BT Brands operates and owns a fast food restaurant called Burger Time. The company also operates in Minnesota as a franchisee of Dairy Queen. All right, real quick, folks. Is this company like curing cancer anytime soon? Is this company coming out with like a revolutionary burger that we've never seen before? Right? So you can't trust this stock as far as you can throw it. I hate to break it to you. I have no problem getting out break even on the second half. This thing's going to crash and burn eventually, right? So, the BTBD trade, hey, for what it's worth, it played nice for a little while, and this became pretty clean as resistance. And you know what? I'll even toss this level back on my screen again at 419 because hey, if it wants to not break lower and if it wants to try and come back up and above later on, I'm an equal opportunity trader. Just because I got out here doesn't mean I won't try and get back in if it presents a good opportunity for me. So at least for there, we'll see what happens to this trade later on. But let me get back to my agenda here. We had a full kind of slate here just before. A bunch of trades popped earlier today. What's today, folks? Today is Monday. What's today, folks? It's August 4th. We're in the dog days of summer on a Monday. This is the type of day that you normally just want to sit on your hands. You normally say, regardless if it's a giant pop, giant drop, it's just the type of day where you normally don't anticipate as much volume to be traded. Granted, if there's great news within the economy, good economic numbers here or there, obviously that could always change things within the market. Of course, we had a great pop today. So it's not to say don't trade, but it's normally to say just trade less. It's normally to say sit on your hands a little bit more. Let trades come to you, right? But that's just where I'll tell you. We had a bunch of moves earlier. The BTBD trade was the first one. Then the Jobby trade, of course, is the next one that we'll talk about because we've been on top of Jobby, quite frankly, since as long as we've been on top of Archer since like the end of last year. We've been following these EVTOL swing trades or trades for a long time, mainly as day trades, and then more so than recent here as swing trades. Archer for a little while was the hotter hand. This broke out pretty nicely here, but then cooled off after a little while. And that's where Jobby just obviously exploded, doubled up pretty much in the last 1 month. So we day trade these stocks, but once the stock looks to begin to make higher lows, higher highs, it does present the thought behind this trying to be a good swing trade. So even from here, once it looks to kind of break local set of higher highs back from the beginning of January, easy to say it took off, but it's also easy to say, yeah, the pace of the stock certainly changed once it cleared that level. This kind of reminded me a lot of the QBTS stock that we swing traded back in the beginning of this year too, right off this 1150-ish 12 area. And obviously it took off pretty nicely. But that's just where for the Jobby trade, this was, a great swing trade for a long while here with us on our trading floor. But today, hey, the CEO was on CNBC, I think today, or Fox Biz, one of the two. Fausto had brought that up himself just, earlier inside the trading room. Give me a quick moment here. So you can see right here, Fausto wrote this pretty much as soon as he logged in this morning, like it was one of his first posts. Jobby was on CNBC this morning, some good news on it. I posted the news immediately afterwards for him, trading higher after the company announced it will acquire Blade's passenger division for $125 million. So, Fausto brought this up before as we were doing our commentary just earlier. Let me ask our longtime students, at least here, because you might be more familiar with this. We cover this a lot in our class, even in phase one. Quite frankly, we focus on the other side of it once a company gets bought out by another company. But when a company is purchasing another company, what normally happens to the stock price, folks? When we're seeing company A purchase company B, what normally happens to the stock price of company A? I was saying price drops. Absolutely. Yeah. And when one company purchases another, it's using a lot of free capital, a lot of operating cash flow, perhaps. And then with that, the stock price normally drops. That's kind of the routine move that we see. Now it goes back up oftentimes afterwards. I mean, I just remember this like the back of my hand. I remember Celsius energy drink here. This is back when I swing traded Celsius. I took a loss on it at first, then I took a pretty nice win. But The news on Celsius here was earnings, which led to a pop, but they actually also bought out their competitor, Alani Nu. It's another energy drink. And then over time, yeah, it pulled back, it filled the gap, moved back up, right? Long story short, moved back up, right? So with Jobby, it's not to say it's not going to go back up later on, but it's just normally when that news hits that they purchase another company for $125 million, normally the stock price drops. That's why this thing's a freak show. That's why this thing's an anomaly. That's why this thing is, outside the normal expectations that we focus on here. So, you know what? It had a good pop at 7 o'clock. And then I guess the CEO was on TV around like 8:30, 8:45 going into the opening bell here. So, of course, had a good reaction right before the market had opened up. Well, hey, let me ask our students this question right here. I see a lot more of us just joining us here. Give me a quick moment. Gather my screen here. Who else we got here? We got Glenn. We got Anna joining us. We got Terrell, Yehuda. We got Bill. We got, who else? Ray. We got Gene M. We got Sonia always here joining us here. Scott, great to see you as well. What common set of price levels should we focus on for a stock like this, like Jobby? It's not the most expensive stock under the sun, obviously. So what common set of price levels should we best focus on for this trade? Where we often find these iceberg orders, right? And we cover this all throughout our classes, our privatized coaching here in our group workshop for free every Monday. Yeah, I mean, you could even rely more on the whole number levels. You could. So like 18, but then otherwise you possibly could say 1850. And then after that, you could definitely say 19. So right away, one thing I want to point out is that this is where I messed up my trade this morning on Jobby. So show you what I did this morning. I wish it worked out better. It definitely worked out better, but I wish I had stronger hands to hold. Listen, it's a Monday morning in the middle of the summer. I found better opportunity to come across my plate. You'll see in just a bit. Obviously with the BTBD trade, of course, too. But this one I let get past me. I'm a little upset by it. So here's what I mean. This is Friday's book map. This is Friday's book map that we had. So in the afternoon on Friday, this moved up. It broke 18 here and then came back down. It filled the order and then came back down there. So at least there was some form of buying pressure, right? Like, hey, for instance, for all of our students here once more, when we're seeing a stock go up, 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 and it's breaking above big resistance levels, what color is showing up on time and sales there normally? Green, right? And what do we nickname the green as, at least when it comes to the time and sales? This is how I basically condition this in your head. But buyers, right? So I took this as buying pressure. I was like, oh, we got some buying pressure here, right? All right. Well, that's what led me to this morning. I'm so pissed about this, but I'm going to go over it with you here because this is group therapy, right? So, this is just where I tell you, at least it kept fighting this 18 level throughout the pre-market hours this morning. And I jumped into this trade. I think it was like right around here. Yeah, it was right over 18. Actually, I chased it. I got in at like 18.11 because I thought it was going to run. I was pretty confident with the setup. So I did think like, all right, just scale back your size. Just do this on like 200 shares. But I jumped into 18.11. Now, I thought it was going to run. It started off okay. It pulled back. Time's going by. There's other trades that are moving here too, mind you. The SNGX, we'll get to that next, obviously. But I got out on this trade. I made like 3 cents, 4 cents on this trade, barely anything. And then maybe about 10 minutes later, 15, 20 minutes later, just, right? Just, let me ask, has that ever happened to anyone, at least inside our live trading room, or has that ever happened to you on social media? Because, man, I mean, I'm expecting a big move shortly after, especially here at this point going into the 8 o'clock move on a retest of 18. Damn near every one of us, right? Right. So that's just where, hey, this took off pretty nicely, but it required like a little elbow grease. If you ever watched, what was it, Happy Days, the Fonz? You had like elbow the jukebox a little bit to get the music playing. But, eventually the song started and it was a pretty sweet song. Now, at this point, though, I moved on to other trades after the market opened. We were calling this out as a group. Fausto was on this. A bunch of our students were on this. Personally, I moved on. I focused on the BTBD trade. I focused on SNGX. I was looking at others. I think Roberto called out APLD, which I took a liking to for a bit. The open trade, I was swing trading that going into pre-market and got out. So I was looking for a move back up. Here we are right now, actually there on that one. But going back to Jobby, hey, we had said before as a collective, as a group just before, so many of us just wrote before 50-cent levels and whole numbers, right? All right, well, market opens. We wait the first 5 minutes. Unfortunately, this pops 19 and holds over 19 within the first couple. Stinks that this starts to move up higher without us at first. But there seems to be another entry on this trade over time because this came back down, ended up flipping the VWAP essentially into support. Like essentially, that's where it bottomed out. That could have been a great entry if you were solely focused on VWAP price there. But even the 1950, it broke under and over 1950. It was basically holding the combo of the VWAP and 1950 pretty damn well as support. And then it moved back up to make a higher high. And even if you missed it from there, the more times it's pecking and stabbing 20, that's where you're thinking, all right, there's a chance for this to at least try and get up higher. So you may have missed part of the trade if you had waited to get in off at 20. But this could have been a nice little trade, 20 up to 2040. This iceberg that showed up looks like it laddered down from 2050. So, yeah. Hey, real quick, this one's a pretty quick question that I know all of us will get here because not only do we cover this in our phase one stock course much more in depth, we take a lot more time to cover this, but each and every week here in Traders Talk, we ask, what time is reversal time here in the stock market? What time do we normally anticipate reversals to happen anyway? 10:30, right? 7:30 Pacific at least. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, this moved up off at 20 here pretty well. You still could have jumped in off at 20, and you still could have gotten out right around 2040-ish, maybe a little higher, but otherwise, reversal time kicked in pretty shortly from there, dumped back down, moved back up again, of course, after. So there could have been an even other entry from that point. It takes us right to our next resistance, at least. So, you might ask, like, oh, why not just hold on the whole way through? Well, that's easy to say, Captain Hindsight, right? I mean, hey, we have parameters that we not just scan for stocks that we trade, but there's strategy, right? Much more often than not, stocks like this will look to exhaust out or fully reverse at 10:30 in the morning Eastern. So why not jump in here at that 20 level and then jump out where you had at least a bit of an iceberg here at 2040-ish, 2050 otherwise, take a small profit. And you have the chance to try and jump back in. You have the chance to at least re-enter this trade or find another stock that's moving, right? I mean, there's plenty of other stocks to be caught earlier, if not even just before. Whole bunch of movers at least here. So this one too. But that's just where even now, hey, what happens if you're trying to get in on this trade currently at 21 bucks or at this area? Thankfully, this stock is breaking all-time highs. So there's no historical data that you need to care for. There really isn't. I mean, it's just either it makes a higher high and keeps with higher lows, or this is a head fake and it comes down, right? So if you're day trading this and trying to capture the next day trade move on this, I would wait to see this break over 21 first, because at least that's your next resistance. Why enter directly under resistance? Doesn't benefit any of us, right? I'd rather wait to see a stock break above resistance or at least show buying pressure off of it, and then I'll have the thought of trying to take it from there. There seems to be an order on the bid showing up, which could help this try and make a squeeze up to 21 perhaps first. 34,000 shares on the bid right here at 2050, 50-cent level. But yeah, I mean, at this point, it might just be best to let this thing just hang out for a little while and see the more times it nibbles away at 21, then where's your next resistance from there? 22, at least as of right now. So are we going to be that greedy to try and take a riskier trade as we're entering very close underneath resistance? Or do we want to be patient and intelligent with our strategy and wait for this resistance to get broken through, knowing full-fledged that our next level is not until 22 bucks for now? So there's a lot more meat to take off the bone by actually waiting a little bit for a higher price. That's all. Or otherwise, if this just craps back out here or craps back down here, perhaps you could see a resistance at 2040 flip into support. 2050, 2040, perhaps that past resistance can flip into your next support here on the way down. That's all. All right. So one thing I'll tell you, at least, I did jump into a trade, not on the jobby myself, but at least later on this morning, the ONDS. Now, this was on a coaching call with one of my students, Kevin, that's joining us here. So I was going over something similar with him, generally speaking, with VWAP, and just kind of focused around that. And the ONDS is an EVTOL trade. Basically, it's an air taxi stock like Jobby. So we've traded this with Job in the past. Jobby's the stronger stock, obviously, needs to be said. But at least here, when this moved up at first, I was waiting for a pullback down to VWAP here between 250, the 180,000 share block print that got filled here at 250, green ball, plus the VWAP. I was anticipating on that trying to act as support. Now, the question is on this trade, much like the same exact thing with Jobby, is this going to try and break higher? Is this going to play nice? Is this going to try and make a squeeze up at least a little bit more? If so, then this should look to follow suit. And on this trade, at least for the ONDS, I had resistance at 270, $2.70. That was resistance earlier in pre-market. Then from there, 3. So that's kind of been my game plan. I'm hoping for one more push on this to get up to at least 270. Then we'll react and see where it goes. If this comes back down, unfortunately, I'd get stopped out break even. I already have my stop set on this right at my entry price. So if this comes down sooner, then so be it. But that's kind of the strategy that I use going into this time of the day. If you've already made your money and took enough off the table, however you want to call it, then it gives you some opportunity to try and hang on to trades like this that are rather now 50-50. Is it going to try and break higher or not? So if you let go of that profit, we talk about this all the time here and more in our phase 2 stock course. That's more intermediate, going over risk management. But if you've already done your errands, done your chores, you can go outside and play. You could take, not to say riskier trades, I mean, yeah, here and there, but doing it responsibly, or otherwise hold on to a trade that maybe you could have had the chance to pocket 5-6 pennies off of here. But if it comes down and takes me out break even, it's like going par on a hole in golf. It's like a one-person game of golf. And if you go par on the second hole or the third hole in golf, are you really that upset? Are you going to be like ripping your hair out, like pissed off? No, not really. And especially if you went, birdie and an albatross before that, right? So I'm trying to whip out all the fancy golf terms now in front of you here. But otherwise, at least for right now, we'll see what happens on this ONDS with the Jobby. A stock that popped earlier, just mentioning it here now because I'm in it. I'm on the top right here of my screen. So the BTAI, I'd called this out just before we started Traders Talk. Let me just get to this here briefly. Not going to take much time on this, but if you want to know why I'm kind of making the call outs I make, let me just do this. Go. Here we go. BTAI needs to flip $1.72 into clean support if it wants to make another move. So that was just before here. This is a stock from earlier this morning, and I saw it begin to move up just before. So at 11:27 in the morning, pretty much where it's at here, where my cursor is, I'd made that comment saying, listen, if you want this stock to make a move later, it's got to at least play nice and flip $1.72 into clean support. You could probably use $1.70, which is what I did with my stop at least. But there's a chance for this to try and make a move later on today. I think that this thing moved on Friday for us. Yeah, it did, but it popped and dropped. Yeah, it had a good move at least to begin, but then it came totally right back down. So history could repeat here, right? Not out of the weeds, not out of the doghouse on this trade yet, but at least for the BTAI, I'll show you why I made that call out here. This mainly just has to do with the opening print. Oh, shouldn't have done that much. There we go. Got 107,000 shares that popped up right when the market had opened right here at $1.72. Hey, just to keep this example pretty clean and basic and simple, if you're a student here, one more time for me. I sound like I'm one of those like Woody dolls, those drawstring dolls from Toy Story. You pull the string and he says the same 4 lines over and over again. What color is this dot here, folks? Right? I know you know this answer, but what color is this dot? Lee says, I obviously haven't golfed with him. Lee, I'm kind of speaking in my dreams there, my friend. Yeah, last thing I'll ever do is probably get a hole-in-one in golf or an albatross or anything good. That's why I'm here. Green, right? All of us, obviously I know you know the answer here. And what do we nickname green as? What's the nickname that we're giving green here? Buying. Yeah, so that's all I'm coming from here. Hey, if this wants to move up later on today, if this wants to go to 2 and higher, then this has to play nice. This is 106,000 shares that got filled here immediately when the market opened up, before the second sell order showed up here at $1.95. Before that showed up, just use this for reference. This was about 100,000 shares at 2, 900 or 99,997 shares, right? All right, well, that's big. We know that's big, right? Well, if that's big, then how much larger is this? How much bigger is this? 106,191. So let's give this a lot of respect, is what I'm saying. And if this wants to make a move, then this just has to play cleanly as support. If it's not going to play clean as support, then game over. I could see this dropping back down to like $1.50, $1.20. Once the music stops, game over. That's pretty much it. So the good thing with this stock, at least, is that it has really good liquidity, tight spread. I'm not expecting this to open up any amount unless if it wants to go berserk and get halted. But that's just where I tell you, at least this is more of a category 1 or 2, very low risk. If it wants to make the move, might not be very quickly, but at least it would be by playing nicely and flipping that level into a working support. That's it. All right, let's keep it moving here, folks. We got a bunch more to go through. We went over Jobby. We went over the BTBD trade. Let's actually check back in on that one. How's that doing? Haven't missed much. It tried to creep back up and over this level even since we got out, but really hasn't done anything either way. Moved up higher, moved lower. It's actually good for us because we just avoided some crap. Listen, if this tanks right now, then even better. We just move on completely. If this wants to linger here and not come back up above this yet, and then by like 1 o'clock Eastern today, like obviously coming up in 23 minutes, if this tries to set up another move where I have the chance to jump in and I set a super conservative stop, it's not going to cost me really much at all, right? So as long as the stock plays nice by my rules, then I'll try and take the trade. Of course, keep in mind, the stock market doesn't revolve around Josh Levitan's rules. It doesn't revolve around, Grant's rules, Michael's rules, Barbara's rules, Roseanne's rules, Lynn and Randy's rules, Kathleen's rules, Jean's rules, Uriah's rules. Our money does, at least. So we have to make sure we stick to our own rules for our own money. Now let's go over one more trade from the morning session. I got a bunch of emails, or I should say 3, in fact, that came in so far. I'll check more in just a bit if any other ones came in. But hey, let's go over the SNGX because this was where my bread was buttered early. So SNGX was actually a great trade from last week too, because it popped up pretty well back on Thursday and then came back down pretty quick. So we know it's a pop and drop stock, right? History could easily repeat itself, right? So no surprise that this came back down. That's the first thing I'll say there. But otherwise, I missed Jobby because that moved up without me, right? And once I got out on my position, it's not like it took off immediately without me. So I felt good with what I did initially. And I'm looking for a trade that's just trending better, that's more worth my time. And well, that's where I ended up finding the SNGX. And this started to make a pretty quick move early here. So let me just get the call out showing. All right, give me a sec here. Also, what are we doing here? Is this little... All right, so the SNGX trade, I think I'd call this one out pretty early, around 8:50 in the morning, saying starting to pop. I could see this being a pop and drop stock back down to 310. Well, guess what? I was wrong with that. This did not pop and drop back down to 310, at least initially. So I was pretty reluctant on it at first, right? And then I said maybe an iceberg on the bid could help this keep higher lows, but otherwise I'd be careful. So that was all right around here when it first was pushing up. Obviously, that didn't happen where it had pulled back down rather fast. I was skeptical. I was reluctant of this making another move. There was some headline that at least came out, so I guess that helped it, right? Let me show you the headline at least that came out on this trade. So this popped back last week on some pharma news, phase 2 study, blah, blah, blah. You can't trust that as far as you could throw it. So, going into today, at 8:30, some report came out But you don't know if this is some blog, some like person living in their parents' basement, like, like Cheetos on their, shirt writing this. You really don't. I mean, listen, I don't know what this is. Network Newswire editorial coverage. Never heard of it. If it was Reuters, if it was Bloomberg, if it was Fox Biz, CNBC, blah, 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 blah. I'd put a lot more weight into it. When I saw this, I'm like, who is this? Some blogger? Is this like Seeking Alpha? Can't trust those people at all. Now, the good part with this is that this stock was linked with like Bristol Myers, Merck, Pfizer, and I guess this one too. I'm not as familiar with INSM, but some super large cap stocks in the pharma and medical business, right? So I think that's definitely something that helped them push up a lot better in pre-market. But it's like I tell you, prove me wrong. I'll believe it when I see it, right? So if this wants to make a better move, if there's better conviction on this stock at a higher price, then I have no problem waiting for that higher price. It's as simple as that. Now, here's where, though, things got a little dicey because on this trade, this popped early in the morning. And quite frankly, I was a little lazy for a Monday morning. So I didn't have my coffee yet. I was like just sipping it. I didn't have my caffeine in me. So that's where I'll tell you, if I was any quicker, I would have went directly to, as I did this later on, I went directly to my call outs from Thursday when we last traded this stock. That was back on, I think it was the 31st of last week. So I'll show you this here. So this is just from my side, the admin side, obviously, but this is from Friday or Thursday, 31st. And you could see, I was looking at this initially at $2, or we all were, but let's see if this could flip to resistance into support. All right. Well, listen, when this is trading at 360, 380, moving up here, two is a little irrelevant. So where else was I calling out levels on this trade? Where did I have my levels that I gave you? Quite frankly, I don't really see any here at all. 8:40 in the morning. Now here at 11:09, I was writing back to one of our students, Tim, saying that, hey, 148,000 share iceberg was on the ask at $4. Right? That was on Thursday last week, mind you. Russell says SNGX took out the iceberg. So follow me here. Ready? There was a 148,000 share iceberg on the ask at 4. The stock was going up, 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 up. And Russell here says it took out the iceberg. What color is going to show up on the time and sales when that happens? What color shows up on the time and sales, folks? What do you got for me there? Go back to my chat here. And the stock is going up, 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 and it is breaking through that iceberg on the ask. What color is showing up on the tape? Green, right? And one more time, folks. It's like the same catchphrase, unfortunately, over and over. The toy's broken. I'm saying the same thing over and over. Hey, what are we nicknaming that here, folks? That's not selling pressure, right? So that is definitely formative buying pressure at first. Now, of course, it may have made like a pop and drop. It could have been just some silly pop and drop move, and that's it. So let's see. I had here, this was later in the morning back on Thursday, saying I had a line drawn at 430 earlier as a historical level. So that's where I'm kind of saying it's from the daily chart, the weekly chart, going back long term. So let's take a look. I'm looking pretty much right here. And I put two lines here pretty much, 420 and 430 together. I realized a little afterwards it wasn't just 430. It was like 420-ish, 430-ish, 425, the high on this weekly candle. On this side, actually, 422, the low on this weekly candle. So, a lot of convergence there. Right there, 431, the high on this weekly. 422, the high on this weekly, and then just otherwise pop drop just on these otherwise. So I thought that at least was seeing that hold pretty well as resistance going back on the long-term chart. This was even back from Thursday last week, mind you, right? So how did that play out from Thursday? Did that 420-ish, 430-ish area act as support resistance? Did it act as a top? Did it act as a bottom? Quite frankly, not really a bit of either. It kind of just broke above it at first. So you'd figure once it breaks above it here, that there would be a shot for this to flip into a support. I'm speaking at the 420, 430. So just failed to hold over cleanly above the historical level. Well, maybe that's because the volume was traded off of four. So it seems like four was just the stronger price here, that iceberg. But point being is just that we have two levels here back from Thursday, right? From Thursday last week, we had two pretty strong prices to keep a good eye on. Iceberg level at four, then historical level at like 430. So in pre-market this morning, I took two trades on this stock. Thankfully, it worked out pretty nicely, but it's easy to say that after the fact, but it's all based on strategy. Now, this is what I mean. When the stock is moving up, 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 I'd like to think the first time that a stock is testing resistance, it's likely to hold that at first. So I wasn't too confident based on like the news, the blog, as I'll call it, and I felt like this could have been a pop and drop here. Clearly, I was wrong, right? Clearly, I was wrong with that. So I'm just going to say, hey, what if this stock keeps pressing up against four? What if this stock keeps poking $4 as resistance? Well, much like everyone wrote me here just before here, you're likely seeing more green and green and green on the time and sales, more buying pressure over time. So I ended up jumping in on this trade at first. I got in at 402, maybe it was even 401, but I got in right once it broke above this level. And then from there, I got out because, as you'll see in a moment, there was an iceberg here at 425 earlier in the morning, and it stayed out there for a little bit. So I figured there was a chance for that to be a resistance. And then also we have our historical level, right? So the combination of those two with where we had an iceberg and then, that 430 that we've been focused on a bit, well, that was resistance, at least on the first test here. All right. Now, if there's so much buying pressure off of $4 as a working resistance, and if this stock wants to make another move up later on, whether it's after the market opens or whether it's here, then I'm looking for resistance to flip into support. So this ended up failing to do that at first, and it kind of pulled back initially here. It spiked even as low as 380. So I wasn't initially like jumpy towards this, but I saw it begin to slingshot back up. And from here, I'm thinking, oh, shoot, there's a chance for this to try and make another push. So I re-entered the trade. I got in a little higher on the second trade. I got in right off of 404, 405, but it was pretty much the same exact trade, just right at 430. I think my trade was at, or 427, 428, but just quick in and out, in and out. I'm not trying to hold going into the market open like I normally always say that. So this was a little weird for me to take just around 9:11 in the morning because typically I'm out of trades even at this point. So I jumped in and out just for two separate instances, and that was pretty much where I left off with it afterwards. Came down to support here at $4, but if it's not going to try and build higher low and pop back up, then it's done. And this crashed within the first 5 minutes. So, we moved on from this trade rather quickly after the opening bell, but it was unfortunate. We were hoping for this to at least pan out better, maybe hold support better off of four, build back up over time. But this just goes to what I say all the time otherwise, like general sentiment of you can't trust these small cap stocks as far as you could throw them. How about this? I mean, I say it all the time. Barely remember what I have for breakfast in the morning, right? Each day. Real quick, off the top of the head, what was like the hot hand from last week? What was the trade from last week that made the big run up for us? It was one of the small cap stocks. If you just remember off the top of your head, let's see. Does anyone recall what was the one? Chuck saying BM&R. Nah, that one was a little too wacky. That one wasn't like as tradable there, Chuck. Uriah says Jobby. Well, that one wasn't so crazy. That one was, right within our realm of tradability. So that was like really, that was an impressive move. But got a few of us with some good answers, might I say. SUPX, CPOP, TNON. I'm gonna take you back to V-Wave, and then we'll go through the others because shoot, we'll go through the others. I mean, hey, no one answered V-Wave, right? So I don't think anyone really remembered V-Wave or had that on the top of their head when I just posed that question. It probably took Chuck a little bit to remember SUPX, or for Dave to remember TNON, or for Margaret to remember the CPOP trade there, right? I barely remember what I had for breakfast in the morning. So that's where I tell you, at least this SNGX trade, I can't trust this thing as far as I could throw it. If it's not going to play nice, then just move on. That's it. Find the next stock that's building higher lows and trying to make that next big move. Just don't be speculative with it. It's possible this could have even moved back up here. But if we don't have any respectable levels before $4, then I'd probably even wait for this to come back up to 4. And if it doesn't do that, then so be it, right? All right, folks, let's keep on moving along here. We only got 10 minutes left. I got some emails that I do have to get to before we finish up, but we'll go through some real quick hitters just on swing trades. I had a couple, private chats earlier, not as much leading into traders talk, but I told them, I'll cover it in traders talk coming up. Swing trades. So I will say, just ask Fausto tomorrow morning, just specifically him, like what swing trades he's in. Off the top of my head, I don't have his positions off the top of my head. But I will tell you, though, I'm out of my swing trades. I'm not in any swing trades right now live. I'm in on ONDS, which may turn into a swing trade, but I'm leaning towards not. And then the BTAI is a day trade for right now. So I closed all my swing trades here. Let me tell you what happened. So let's go through the shit that didn't work out here to begin. Webull, it's going up a little bit here, but I ended up letting this get past me. It ended up popping up so well off of $13, $13.25. We were focused on this back in the beginning of July and made a nice re-break over resistance. This is when we had jumped in pretty much on this given morning here. What a move up. It played out so well with the initial reaction, but this thing sucked at holding support. So if it's not going to play nice, I hate to say it, but I ended up going break even on my trade. I held into this as it dropped. It pushed back up a little bit more here. I thought there was a chance for it to go back up. And then when it pulled back, I just got out. I was like, listen, there's other trades that are moving right here, not just swing trades, but day trades. My attention can't be everywhere. If this wants to go back up, maybe I'll jump back in. Maybe I won't. But again, that's where I try and balance my mind and not get too upset about the oh no's. And there's other trades that did work out, which I'll show you in just a bit. Fubo did not work out as well because this did not stick as nicely. But I think that we have more time for this to see play out right off of this 390 level. This was such a good entry going into this Wednesday morning here. Had a great pop and move up. And then again, very similar. It came back down where I was hoping to see support hold better. But right around 390, I'm looking to see this resistance flip. So maybe that will happen today. Maybe that will happen tomorrow. But I think that we got a little time here. It did just do it before right here. So that's interesting to see. I wasn't there to take that. Happens. But let's go over the trades that did work out. Obviously, HIMS, the gap fill, and then some. I jumped in on this as a swing trade this Friday when it wicked down off the lawmaker news with the FDA. And I got in at 56.45, ran up pretty well that afternoon, the next couple of days. We had a huge gap to fill on the long-term chart at 64.20. So I ended up taking half my trade out pretty much right. Maybe no, I took half my trade out as it was like at 62. Then the second half, as it was over the gap, a little higher, but not much. Then I got out at this point. But by the time it popped higher, I wasn't in it here. So it's back down to pretty much where I was getting out anyway. But my whole entry and thesis was on this was to see this gap eventually get fully filled. So objective complete there. I may look to go back into HIMS as a swing trade, but there's a lot of pizzas in the oven. Let's just say that. A lot of irons in the fire, right? Now, the open stock, this was a great swing trade, and it's actually going back up right now in front of me here, but that's fine because I got out on this trade this morning in pre-market. So on Friday, I was talking about this move because, it's starting to go back up a little bit. There was some headline talking about the meme stocks again. Maybe there's going to be another meme move. So I figured, why not? It's cheap. It's right at a whole number level. You had a bit of a low right around like 190-ish, 188. So my risk was up till 188. And once I got in, things were pretty slow at first, but this actually popped in the after hours on Friday, led to a nice move. So I stayed into this once I saw I was up a decent little amount. And just earlier this morning in pre-market, I ended up getting out of my trade in full. I was around like 240, 245, just scaled out in two parts, but better that than I guess. I mean, either way, move back up, I reckon. But maybe I'll try and jump back in on this trade, not as a swing, but as a day trade. We'll see where this goes into the afternoon session. If I'm looking at this as like some sort of swing trade again, 2 wicks here. You could even say a third there, but that's a little further out. But you have this open price here on this candle right at 265, which lines up pretty well. Wouldn't shock me if this could be a resistance here for even today. So maybe you can catch a little day trade move on this open to go from like 245, 250, maybe up to a 265. There's a thought behind that. All right, so listen, they're not all going to be perfect, but as long as A, you're not getting your ass kicked on these trades, and then B, otherwise you're making money on a good amount of them otherwise. So adding Hims and Open to my list of winning trades throughout the year. All right, now again, folks, I will say we're going to wrap up in about 5 or 7 minutes, but I told you earlier, email me any questions. So going forward, if you have questions, just email me, and anything I don't have the chance to get to, I could go through with you on the side in private chat, schedule your coaching one-on-one, and I can go over that with you there. But I know a few students sent in questions just before. Let's go to Uriah, one of our trial members, I think, just asking from earlier. I got his email from earlier. Do you find big orders to also be like magnets, not maggots, magnets? I got a speech impediment. Sorry about that. Magnets. Instead of a stop sign. I got to sip more water here too. Because many times looking at Bookmap level 4, it looks as if there are no orders on the stock, and then it doesn't really do anything. And once an order does appear, then the stock goes kind of right to it. Well, very detailed eye, Uriah, and I hope that you're enjoying your time with us here at CTU. Yes, these iceberg orders could be potential magnets or targets, whatever you say. That's not a guarantee, though. So the longer the line is out there for, the more I could trust it as a working resistance. APLD here at 14, there definitely was no guarantee it makes a move up there by today. This could have been a move by tomorrow, by Wednesday. But by the time the market opens and this does pop, breaks above the opening print here, which I teach in class. All right, well, listen, it's 10:04 in the morning. If someone took this trade right here, then I would say that your next major resistance is not until here. But be careful because you might happen to see it pull back around 10:30, 11 o'clock, perhaps, just reversal time. You could take the money and run. What if there was a new sell order that showed up here over time? And if it's an even larger order than this, it might add even further selling pressure, which drives the stock down. So when you see an order pop up here early in the pre-market, hey, the longer it's out there, the more I could trust it. The longer it's out there, the more I could possibly use it as a target. Hey, look what's here on ONDS, my ONDS trade, right? So I told you about this off 250 VWAP. That held nicely as support on the first test. That's where I jumped in with Kevin during our coaching session before. If this wants to keep popping, 3 would be your huge resistance. But let's actually look here because let's not discount what was at 270. It's not as big as what's out there at 3. But granted, I'm going to still count this as resistance because this was out here for a long, long, long time. So, yeah, I mean, 269, 270 should be my next level here on this trade. But that's kind of how I use these iceberg orders. The key, though, is what's the actual trend of the stock? If the stock is not trending upward at the time, then it's not for me to say that that's the target because, the trend is your friend first, right? So even going back to the SNGX trade that we had, $4, there was an iceberg there and it blew over it over time. So yeah, it kept going up a little bit further. But what happens when the music stops? What happens when this stops playing nice? What happens when, we're on the top of the roller coaster looking back down? So of course it's possible this could be support, but even if there was an order on the bid here, when this is trending back down towards this and it keeps poking, even if there was an iceberg on the bid there, well, if it breaks it, then this thing is going down like Frazier. This thing is done. So that's basically just a good example. But yeah, in a nutshell, basically that's how I would have you interpret it. Just follow the trend first. From Sam, he emailed me this earlier at 10:19 asking, oh yeah, I got to get to this too there, Sam. Thank you very much. Good segue, actually, perfectly. You mentioned you will discuss crypto. Is crypto deviating from your theory that it follows the M2 global money supply curve? I thought your correlation of crypto with the money supply was pretty brilliant. Thank you very much, Sam. I appreciate the kind words. Apparently not brilliant enough because, yeah, there was some good divergence between the money supply recently and Bitcoin. And I mean, not extreme, but it's not carbon copy. It's not going to be to the T. So that's where you may have heard me not talk as much about M2, right? If you saw me a little quiet on that, or maybe you didn't hear me say much about it, it's because, yeah, I mean, I kind of moved away from that slightly. But let me show you. Let me get this back up here, and I'll talk briefly about Bitcoin as we wrap up. Okay, this is on the 108. Okay, so M2 global money supply. Basically, it's this line here. This represents the total E to convert assets, cash, of course, on top of major countries within the world. I gave you a whole list last time we covered this. So, point being is that over the last, well, year plus, because since the beginning of the Bitcoin ETF, I feel like the Bitcoin spot price was following M2 global money supply really well. And we had called out this bottom like flawlessly. This was incredible here over time, just perfectly here where it bottomed out. But after that point, I was expecting similar correlation. And there were just some steeper shakes down here, as you saw, like as the M2 moved up higher here. This did not. This came crashing down temporarily and then back up. So you can't directly use it. It's a great guide. So, hey, if you're kind of poking at M2 from this point and you're saying, what's next? Well, generally speaking, from how I have the M2 money supply laid out, it's going to go up. So you figure Bitcoin likely will continue to go up, especially into mid to late October, where there's a giant print where it spikes up the M2 global money supply, this is, and then back down. So maybe going into mid October, generally speaking, you could see Bitcoin continue to go up, but it's definitely not a direct correlation. So just be very careful of like sharper drop off at times, liquidation there perhaps too. Get to this. So generally with Bitcoin, let's go very quickly into just spot price for a moment, because I know some of us here inside our trading room have said, and it's true. Historically, August is not a great month performance wise, right? So let me just show this if I can. I don't normally use indicators or any crap when I'm day trading, but since I'm swing trading and here with you in a workshop, I got the time to mess around here a little bit, don't I? So I want to point out, I think this was from either the weekly chart. I think it was the monthly chart. I think this was on the monthly chart for Bitcoin. This looks a little messy here to begin. Pardon me. Pardon me. Okay, so RSI, not a great indicator to use by its own, on its own, by itself. You got to complement it with MACD or other things as well. But point being is that you want to see higher lows to see at least more support kick in. So that's where you're seeing as the RSI bottoms out and begins to peak back up here. Well, that's when the Bitcoin price is going to look to go up. But take a look. I just want you to see this. Probably doesn't look as easy to see at first. Let me get this changed. Do a little of that. Do a little of that. Perfect. There we go. All right. So notice when this moving average on the RSI ends up, kind of breaking as support. Notice as the RSI comes down here and breaks below this as support all the way back from 2013. Yeah, that was the beginning of the end. That was the end right there. Game over. Drop. All right. Well, guess what happens here? The month after it broke below this red line. Game over. That was it. So it's not even a matter of overbought, oversold, but it's a matter of when it ends up breaking the RSI moving average line here, it's pretty much game over, right? Yeah, it had one more pump here at the time, but then back down. So I'm just thinking with as many times as we've seen that, here we are of recent, we're coming back up. We held it as support here. We had a head fake here where it did break below it. Well, it did come back up. So thankfully it held at that point. Yeah, we better continue to hold over this, because the more it keeps getting pressed on and broken over, it's the end. And not forever, obviously. I'm saying it's the end of the given bull market cycle. So, as of right now, things are still okay, but we did have a pretty big scare, at least going into the beginning of August, because, I mean, even today, we're doing good now. Great movement here today, great movement overnight last night. Not so great movement going into Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So, we were not looking so good at first. And actually, that RSI was much closer to breaking that moving average line, if anything. So we bounced back up a little bit, kind of diverged a little bit away from it. So just keep your eyes on that because over time, I'd like to believe if it's going to break below this and close under this on the monthly candle, we got all month to figure that out. Just hopefully it remains above it. But so far, we're still in good standing. Now, if it were to break lower, what would be the next move? Let's say in a total catastrophe, apocalyptic type of scenario where Bitcoin crashes, it's the end of the bull market. Where do we go from here? This is where I kind of find this interesting because when you look at IBIT, we're going a little into overtime here, folks. We're going to wrap up in just a bit. When you look at IBIT, notice this gap on the weekly chart from here to here. So in a total worst case scenario move and Bitcoin totally collapses, wouldn't shock me if, we get IBIT to come down and fill this weekly gap in full. This is back on the week of April 14th. So let me just go back to Bitcoin spot and you'll kind of just see exactly what price that's at. Pretty much right here, around 84, 85,000, right? That's if this were to play out in that manner. So obviously I'm bullish. And as of right now, I'm still bullish. I'm just pointing out what happens if. What happens if we do go lower here from Saturday's low into Sunday's low, let's say throughout this week into next. What if we have some situation where, this line kind of holds as resistance or it's like a little pop and then drop and then come down. So that is not out of the realm of possibility. I just want you to know that. I posted a tweet just saying like Bitcoin looks like it's going to crash down towards 84,000. It was just like, talking out my ass type of comment. You got to imagine, you're like, can you like believe the people that were like responding back to me with anger? Like, oh, screw you. You don't know shit. Like, goes to show how emotional people are within this market. So I hope that Bitcoin continues to hold afloat. But obviously, if things don't pan out, then you just got to be prepared for all situations. All right, real quick. Last one from Steven that came in just regarding American Eagle. Let me also just check spam, see if any other emails came in lastly. Murad, great to have you here just joining us here. One of our trial members there, I see. Your email somehow landed into spam, but I didn't see a question that came in, Murad. So just welcome aboard. But if you have any questions, definitely let me know at least once we finish this workshop up. From Steven here, just one of our newer students here just joining us. He heard Fausto talk about American Eagle last week. He sees it in the news with Sydney Sweeney and kind of asking what my thoughts are long-term for American Eagle. Well, it's at the high of the day now. It's up 20+%, right? So that sounds nice. What's the trend of this stock for the last year and a half? Down. All right, who's winning the battle when this is trending down for a year and a half? The sellers. So I can't be head over heels in my denim jeans for me to jump into this as a swing trade. That's just where you got to see resistance flip into support. So maybe even on a pullback, if this wants to play nice, this could flip this resistance from last week into support at 1220. But you got better long-term resistance, seemingly, right around here. 1270, 1290, right? And it's into it right here. It's testing it right now. You got resistance also likely at 1305. 1305 right there. You got a freaking 104,000 share sell order out there. So that, above all else, is resistance. So you got historical resistance at 1280-ish, 1290-ish. And then on top of that, you got resistance around this 1305. So I'd like to think that this is going to come back down today and hold this as resistance. Now, in the event where this breaks over 1305 or that iceberg at 1305 gets pulled, then there's a chance for this to make a much better move at least. But, folks, that's where we're going to wrap up. Let me get here really quick from Damon. Sent a bunch just before, so I do want to respond back to Damon here. Real quick, Damon, if anything, I could write you back on the side as we finish up because I want to write you back in full. I'm going to sign off here in just a bit for Traders Talk, the workshop at least. We're going to obviously come right back to the chat in just 1 second. Missed out on being on CTU and the TickBlaze webinar. Had a chance to listen to the replay. The CTU plan on some type of joint venture with TickBlaze using the TickBlaze platform. Hopefully that is all I could tell you. That's like really all I could tell you, unfortunately. I wish I could give you more than that. It's not me just being quick with my answer there. It's truthful. You would have to ask Fausto himself. I know that him and Sean are, building something here, a nice little partnership, nice little rapport that we got with the fine folks over at Tick Blaze. But that is all I could tell you. I think that they're going to be together in Toronto, if I'm not mistaken, for the money show. And that's that. All right. From Uriah, just scrolling up here, folks, just as we wrap up, how come sometimes the green bubbles are the same amount as the order it executed? Are the same amount as the order it executes? Because sometimes it could do it in one lump sum. Sometimes it could just break it in one shot. And my bubbles on Bookmap could just be conglomerate. It could be like group of individuals that are buying all together, and it just gives me the conglomerate together. All right, folks. Hey, we are going to wrap up for right now. Went 10 minutes over here at least. If you have any other questions, again, feel free to shoot me over any trades, any questions via email, josh@ctutrading.com. Got a bunch of new gold students that joined us in the last 1 week, 2 weeks. I know I'm working with you in the coaching program that we have one-on-one. I'm looking forward to it coming up this week and next. But hey, of course, if you're a longtime student here, Thomas, John, Roger, you got Scott, Barbara, Roseanne, you got Belle joining us, Joyce, certainly look to get your coaching scheduled. We'll trade together in the live market, and we'll go from there. All right, next audio broadcast coming up 2:30 Eastern later on today, folks, with the afternoon meeting. If you're on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc., a couple things before we finish up. Just feel free to subscribe right to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/cyber trading you. Otherwise, just join us inside our live trading room. Go right down to the link scrolling below on that banner there in blue, c2.co/trial, and we look forward to seeing you there. All right, folks, but otherwise, next broadcast simulcast here will be at 2:30. I'll talk to you then.